Kimmie Scott from Love and Marriage, Huntsville might just be the quiet storm in the group. This isn't just surface-level taco. No, I've got receipts in the form of years of footage, patterns of behavior, and those little moments that might seem innocent if you're not paying attention. But once you see them, you can't unsee them. So sit tight, because this is going to be one of those videos where you find yourself saying, wait, how did I miss that? Let's start with the obvious. Kimmie Scott is one of those people who always appears calm, put together, and in control. She speaks softly. She's articulate. She knows how to keep her composure. And to the casual viewer, that can make her seem like the peacemaker, the sensible one. The one you'd trust in a room full of loud personalities like Letitia Scott, Melody Shari, and Martell Holt. But here's the hooks. Sometimes the ones who speak the most softly are the ones who do the most damage, because they know how to slip in a sting without raising their voice. Now, if you've been following Love and Marriage, Huntsville, from the beginning, you already know that this show started out with a completely different vibe. We thought we were going to see Black excellence, successful couples building together, showing love, running businesses, and creating generational wealth. We thought it was going to be motivational and classy. Instead, well, let's be honest, things took a sharp turn. And in the middle of all the messy storylines, betrayals, and shifting alliances, Kimmie positioned herself as the calm observer. She wasn't the one yelling across the table. She wasn't the one starting screaming matches like Letitia after a few drinks. She wasn't even the one having explosive confrontations like Melody and Martell in their divorce era. But just because she's not loud doesn't mean she's not strategic. In fact, that's where her power lies. Because Kimmie doesn't just blurt things out, she thinks, she calculates, she watches. And if you've really paid attention to her face during certain scenes, you'll know exactly what I mean. The narrowed eyes, the slight smirk, the kind of smile that doesn't reach her eyes. That's not just resting face. That's someone taking mental notes, storing information, and waiting for the right moment to use it. And trust me, you'll want to watch until the very end of this video, because we're going to talk about a few times she's done exactly that. One of the first things you have to understand about Kimmie is how she manages her relationships on the show. Let's take Letitia Scott, for example. Kimmie has openly admitted, yes, openly, that if Tisha weren't family by marriage, she probably wouldn't be friends with her. Let that sink in. That's not just shade. That's a whole tree. And yet, season after season, we see her and Tisha moving together as if they're on the same side. Why? Because sometimes alliances aren't built on genuine friendship. They're built on necessity. And right now, Kimmie doesn't have too many people in her corner, so she plays along. It's a classic move. Smile with you in public, but privately think you're beneath me. And this isn't me making something up. Kimmie's own words and behavior suggest she sees Tisha as bottom of the barrel. She sees her as that girl from the other side of the tracks that Marcel once joked about. And the only reason they're even moving as a pair right now is because the cast has been split into sides and Kimmie needs backup. This is not about deep friendship. It's about survival in a cast where the wrong move can leave you isolated. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Kimmie has a pattern of being very closed off when it comes to her personal life. Think about it. She didn't want to share details about Morris Scott's DUI situation. She didn't want to discuss the dynamic between Morris and her son Jalen. She holds those cards close to her chest. But when it comes to talking about other people's business, she comments on Melody Shari's marriage and divorce from Martell Holt. She weighs in on other people's drama. That's the kind of double standard that should make you pause. And speaking of Melody, let's be clear, there was a time when Kimmie could have been a true neutral party, someone who actually kept the peace between Melody and the rest of the cast. But instead of having Melody's back during some of her toughest times, Kimmie chose to distance herself. She chose to play it safe. And to me, that says a lot about loyalty. In the early seasons, I actually thought Kimmie might be the one to bring everyone together. She had the maturity, she had the communication skills, she had the respect of most of the cast. But what did she do with it? She used that position to quietly judge and quietly plot, instead of stepping up when it really mattered. We've all heard that phrase, misery loves company, right? Well, if you believe the theory floating around, Kimmie might not be as happy in her marriage as she appears. And when you're not happy, sometimes you subconsciously or even consciously don't want others to be happy either. That's where that crabs in a barrel analogy comes in. If you see someone trying to climb out, trying to do better, and instead of cheering them on, you try to pull them back down. And when I look at Kimmie's interactions, especially with people who are doing well or moving forward, I see shades of that. Now, before anyone says I'm being too hard on her, let me just remind you of the Jalen situation. Maurice has always been quick to shower his own son with attention, and that's natural. Parents love their kids. But when you're in a blended family, you have to balance that love so no one feels neglected. And yet, from what we've seen and heard, Jalen didn't always get that same energy. He was just a teenager when Maurice came into the picture, 13 years old. Those are important years, the kind that can shape how a young man sees himself. And if your step-parent is ignoring you while overpraising their own child, that can leave a lasting impact. Kimmie chose to marry Morris and keep that dynamic in place. For some of us, that's a red flag. I'm going to dig even deeper into that later in this video. So stick around because it ties back into why I think Kimmie is way more calculated than most people realize. Okay. And if you think the quiet ones are harmless, you're going to want to hear this part. Let's also talk about how Kimmie moves in group settings. She's not the one jumping up in people's faces like Tisha, but she's starting to pick up some of those habits. You've probably noticed her getting a little more direct, a little more confrontational in her own way. She doesn't come in hot like Tisha with liquid courage. That she will deliver her point with a polite smile, and sometimes that's even more cutting because it's harder to call out. There's also this thing she does during arguments. She sits back, she watches, she giggles quietly to herself. If the drama isn't about her or Maurice, she's fine with it. She let it play out, but the second her name comes up, oh, now it's a problem. That's when the wall goes up. That's when the conversation shifts.